Hi, everyone. My name is Savannah, and we also have Chase with us. We're going to have Mr. Ben be walking through Academy today. So Ben is going to be joining us in the next minute or so. But as we are waiting for him to join, if everyone wants to go ahead and get connected to the dedicated server. And if you have any issues getting connected, please just let us know in the Discord. So as we let everyone get connected, just feel free to get on Hack the Box and get connected.
Hi, everyone. Today we have Mr. Ben. I'm Chase, and Laslayer will be joining us shortly. He will be going over the Box Academy. And whenever you're ready, Ben, go right ahead.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
He can just share his screen, right?
Okay, I think that's working. Okay, so I'll give a quick background on myself for anyone who doesn't know. Ben Rollin, I go by Mr. Ben. Live in Tampa. I've been around Hack the Box since the early days in 2017 when it was more of a volunteer program or platform. I've been around to watch it grow from a few users and very few features all the way up to what we have now. Everything from pro labs to end games and academy, battlegrounds, all kinds of stuff. I originally was a volunteer, and then I worked part-time as a contractor, and then when we decided to start the academy program, I came on full-time, and my current role is the, I guess, head of training development or something along those lines, and I'm in charge of a small team, and we write all the content that you see on Hack the Box Academy. So every single course on there. I write courses. I help plan syllabus. I coordinate my team who writes, content that I'm not too familiar with. We have some external contractors that help us out, and I do a lot of the quality review at the end before we release anything. This Box Academy was, obviously it's inspired by Academy, but we decided to do this as a way to release Academy, like a soft release on the weekend before we announced it to the public back last November. If you're familiar with Hack the Box, we did something similar with the Swag Shop. We had a box called Swag Shop that Chap made, and we used that to introduce the Swag Shop to people who played it before we went public with it fully. So this box, it mimics the actual Academy website. We clone parts of it and use that for it. So, some people when they were playing it actually thought that they were hacking into Hack the Box and were a little confused. And I made this with Egress. We combined on it, but a lot of everything in here is stuff that we've seen either in the real world or things that try to mimic technologies that the Hack the Box Academy and Hack the Box uses to make it more realistic. So I'll just start out here with just some standard enumeration so we can see what we're working with. So I'm just going to just look for open ports, and I'll do a quick scan so we can check out some low-hanging fruit and go from there. So everyone does things differently when they're doing enumeration. I typically, even if I'm playing a CTF or a Hack the Box machine, I usually work the same way I would do if I'm doing a pen test. So I'm a big stickler on logging everything, keeping output, because you never know what you're going to need later. This command here just tells Nmap to go out and look at the open ports, and it's going to by default do the top 1,000 ports. And then it's going to save all output types. So plain text, greppable format, XML. And then even though I only have one target, I could have put the IP. I'm accustomed to doing large pen tests where I have a targets file, so I just put it that way. And then you can put the verbosity as high as you want just to get some more feedback. So we can see the scan completed pretty quickly. And we've got port 22 open SSH and an HTTP or web server running on port 80. It looks to me like a standard Linux box, and pretty standard for a capture the flag or a Hack the Box event. So I'm going to let another scan run in the background while I go and check out what we have here. And I'm just going to change it around. So this is going to scan all 65,000 whatever ports. It's going to look for open ports, and it's going to just do the aggressive scan. So it's going to run OS detection and scripts and some pretty noisy stuff. We can let that go while we go and check out what's on. Actually, let's. So first we can just do some banner grabbing, and we can say OpenSSH. It's most likely up to date, latest Ubuntu, or at the time the latest. Probably not too interesting there. And we can see an unknown web server. So if we browse there, we're immediately redirected to, it looks like there's vhosts in use. In Hack the Box right now, we don't have proper DNS, so sometimes we have to put things on vhosts, and it'll come up like this. And this is if we're going to serve multiple web servers or subdomains on the same web server. So what we can do here is we can just go ahead and add this to our hosts file, and then when we browse back to it again, we should render this vhost and see what's there. So this is just going to use the T command to append this entry to my hosts file. So when we browse to this vhost, it's going to serve it via that IP. And we need sudo because I'm not running as root and we're editing a file that requires privileges. So now if we browse back to it, we're greeted with a page. We can see there's a login, there's a register. Looks like a pretty standard web app. At first sight, you might think, am I actually hacking into Hack the Box? Did I make a mistake? You can just do a quick look around, just look at the page source, just see if there's anything weird in there, but no, I don't see anything there, just those two, the login and register page. Nothing hidden there. So we can check the login page. I mean, we can try some default creds, see if it works for anything. We could just try putting in some output, see if we can produce an error message or anything. Doesn't seem too interesting. We can go back here. We can register a user. So let's just going to register a simple user. Best practice using my username as my password. Okay, so that looks like it registered me and it redirected me back to the login page. So let's just log in and take a look and see what we have here. So this, back when we made it, this was a clone of what Hack the Box looked like, or Hack the Box Academy looked like at the time. It's a bit different now if you're familiar with the platform. We've added some things. We added a lot more modules. The styling's a bit different. If you actually log into Academy and make an account there, when you log in, it's going to obviously show your username. So we can see that we cloned it, as a egress user. So we can click around here. So on the actual site, obviously billing is going to go and show you. You can sign up for a subscription. Here we can see it's just a dead link. Settings doesn't bring us anywhere. We can click around and see the various modules that are listed. So there's a question in Discord about Academy. So it's not included in VIP. It's wholly separate right now from the main Hack the Box platform. But when you do sign up for it, every module that you see that's tier 0 is free because the way Academy works is as a cube system. It's kind of the currency of Academy. So whenever you do a module, it pays back 20% I guess 80% of the cubes that it costs. So everyone starts with 30 cubes. And then when you do any of these tier 0 modules, it pays you back the amount of cubes you have. So you can progress through all of these free tier 0 ones. We have a bunch more now on the actual site. And then the various tiers, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, they cost a different amount of cubes. There's different subscription plans. We do have a student subscription that I believe it's $20 a month, and it gives you all tiers 0, 1, and 2, and you just have to have a valid edu email address to register for that. And then we do have Academy for Business. That's, if companies are looking to buy seats on there, has a kind of an admin management portal for companies that want to use it. We're always adding content to it. So I can click around here. It looks like a lot of the links are dead. I can try unlocking a module and see if there's anything interesting, but try starting one. I mean, for the most part, it looks like these are all dead links, so there's not really anything interesting here for us. So we can go back and check out this Nmap scan and see if it found us anything else. So we see that it is Ubuntu, probably one of the later versions, like 2004. We know there's an Apache web server, the redirect. There's this, looks like MySQL running on a non-standard port. So we can come back and look at that later. Nothing really else there that's too interesting. So at this point, I would go back and start, digging into the actual web app itself. So what I'm going to do is just use GoBuster. There's a lot of different ways we can do this, directory brute forcing. There's dirb in the command line, dirbuster, which is pretty slow and old. There's GoBuster. You can do this with things like, I think, FUF and WFuzz if you'd like to, or if you have Burp Pro, content discovery. But basically, we're going to try to see if there's any hidden directories that we haven't been able to get at yet. And I can't type. So we're just going to give it a word list. I don't want to give it anything crazy in the beginning. If you're on Kali or if you're on Parrot, there's a lot of different word lists at this directory. As we can see, there's the dirb and dirbuster lists. These ones are all built in. WFuzz lists. Another good one, which I can drop into the chat, are the seclists repo on GitHub. There's tons of word lists in there for everything from discovery and fuzzing, payload, usernames. We have that. If you're familiar with Hack the Box at all and use the pwn box, that's actually on the pwn box. I think it's in the op directory under like useful content or something. But I'm just going to go with just a small dirbuster word list. So hopefully we can find something interesting. I think it's small. Okay. And since we know the web app, so far we've seen the login and register.php pages. We're just going to look at first for PHP. And then we can save the output like we should. Okay, hopefully I did that right. We'll let that run for a bit. So if you're familiar with different tools like dirbuster, it's pretty slow. If you ever use dirbuster, I think it's a Java application. Sometimes hangs and crashes. It's back in the day we used to use mostly that, but GoBuster runs much faster. Seems more reliable. So we're starting to get some results back. We already know the login and the register page. This home.php, this is giving us a 302. So, we see that's what we get to when we log in. Index, we know we can access that. Images, directory, we can't get to probably. This config.php and this admin one are particularly interesting to me. So I'll let that run, but I'm going to go check out what else we've got here. So config page, I don't see anything there. And then we've got the admin page. So if we look at the admin page and then we go back and look at the login page, they look pretty much identical, except for the admin login there. So, I mean, it looks like this is our target where we want to get to next. So we did register our user, but obviously they don't have admin rights. We can try some defaults. I mean, I might try something like FUF or Hydra or something on this login form, do some brute forcing, but we can take the page source out, see if there's any other, maybe vhosts mentioned here or any other pages. So I don't see too much interesting, but we can just take a look at the login form here. So nothing out of the ordinary there. So, I mean, it looks like we need to get into this login form, but we need to figure out a way. So let's go back and just check out this page source again. I mean, you can do this with curl if you want to. I'm just being kind of lazy. So I was out pretty late last night for the Lightning game. So I don't see anything in login. I think we have index, which I might have already looked at. And then we've got register. So does anyone in the chat see something of particular interest here? I'm talking about the actual login form. Maybe not, but so here we can see when you log in, it's typical login form. It's going to take your username, it's going to take your password, password a second time. But the interesting one is looks like there's a hidden form field called role ID, and it's by default it's set to 0. So I'm wondering if when we register that, it's probably going to be a parameter in the post request, and maybe we can modify that and get at some other roles. This was actually something that I saw in a web app pen test, probably last year. It was similar to this, but they had a ton of different role IDs, and it was a web app that was actually exposed live to the internet for, 10 years maybe. The client had it, and they had never pen tested it. And we figured out that one of my colleagues and I were working on it, and figured out that you could register a standard user, and you could register an admin, a super admin, pretty much any role you want, and fully take over the application. So we're making this machine. That was what inspired this part of it. And if you played any of the box that I made on Hack the Box, I haven't made one in a while, but pretty much all of them have at least something, if not the entire box, that was inspired by something I saw in the real world. I have to put a little twist on it to make it fun and interesting, but you'll see a lot of that. Okay, so GoBuster finished. Didn't find anything else. We could run a larger GoBuster scan with a bigger word list, but I mean, it looks like I'm pretty convinced that admin is our target, and probably registering a user is what we need to do next. So you can use whatever proxy you want. I always just use burp. So we can grab that post request and try to modify it. I don't think I've updated burp on this machine, but if you're familiar with burp, I'm going to update it quick so I can show you guys. But the later version of burp actually have a built-in Chromium browser, so you don't have to mess around with changing around your proxy settings or using like Foxy proxy or any of that stuff anymore. It's pretty neat. It's made it a lot more. It's been pretty useful for if you're testing web apps that are maybe using AD auth or using certificate-based authentication or some weird thing where you might have had to use burp with an upstream proxy to Fiddler or something in the past. So I'm a big fan of it, and that's not what I wanted to do. I'm just going to install this. I should have had this updated beforehand, but things happen. Usually when I go on site for a pen test, I'll have a brand new VM that I update at least the night before. So I have all the tools I need. You never know if you're going to have internet access when you're on site or if you're going to be able to update stuff. So it's always best to have some kind of pre-built image of all of your favorite stuff on there and just keep it updated and be able to spin it up quickly for an engagement. So hopefully it's going to pull up the new version now. Yeah, night before. Don't always want to do that. I don't know. Well, yeah, I'd say at least a few days before. And yeah, I mean, I've had stuff too, even where I built a VM a day or two before, everything worked perfectly. Specifically for wireless usually, and then I get on site and absolutely nothing works, and I spend half the day rebuilding it, which is pretty awesome. Does anyone know why this is not pulling up the new version? Do I got to restart or something? I know her. I don't know what the problem is. Oh, here we go. No, it doesn't want it. Anyways, I'm not going to mess around with that anymore. Okay, this is the right version. So like I said, now that Burp has a built-in Chromium browser, it's pretty awesome for web app testing. You don't have to go around like you used to, where you would come in to your browser settings and trigger the proxy on and off, or use a plugin like Foxy Proxy or something like that. You can do everything right in the browser. So if you're not familiar with Burp Suite, I definitely recommend learning it. It's a hugely powerful tool, and not just for web app pen testing. I mean, I use it for even password spraying and all kinds of different stuff. So whatever proxy listener you have, once you open the built-in browser, okay, maybe not. Hold on. I don't know if it needs sudo. Try hack me is actually a cuss word around here. Yeah, anything you can get your hands on for learning Burp, I recommend. We're working on a module for Academy, but we're not going to just do Burp. We're going to do more so just using web proxies in general. Okay, I don't know what the problem is with this. I'm not going to mess around with it. But we're going to focus on Burp and Zap proxy, which is, I've not played around with it too much, but it's gotten a lot better. It's from OWASP. It's open source. And then, stuff like Fiddler and different strange proxy configurations you might run into, like having to use an upstream proxy. proxying different tools. It was super helpful if you're trying to run like SQL map or some tool and you actually proxy it through there. Okay, so I've set my browser. The Chromium browser failed. I'm not sure why, but I'm not going to mess with it. So once you actually enable your browser settings and just browse the page, just want to make sure that you're actually capturing traffic. So I can see here the request to the register page, and then obviously we can see the same page source that we saw before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the intercept, and then I'm going to try registering on here and modifying that role ID and see what happens. So here we can see the captured post request. It's doing the UID, it's doing the the password and the confirm, and then role ID 0. So we have to assume that role ID 0 is a standard user, and I would start from the bottom with 1, obviously. And if I was testing this in the real world, if say 1 registered me something else, I would probably try to register quite a few accounts and just start seeing what other roles are out there. There might only be admin or user, but there might be, like in the instance where I was testing something, there was I think 5 or 6 roles, and they were various types of admin roles that kept getting you more and more stuff. So we can set it to 1 and forward on our request. So we're getting success. So you can see that looks like it did register. And one thing here is if you're actually just stepping through your requests live like this, you can go here, and I usually do this, I forgot to, and actually intercept the responses too, so you can see what's coming back, like the 200, or if it's some kind of weird error message, you can see that. So we got the success page. It pushes us on. Welcome. So it looks like it at least registered us, but we're not sure if it actually changed anything. So the first thing I'm going to do is just log in with my new user on the regular page. And it doesn't look like anything's changed here. The user hasn't changed. Still have all the same modules. Looks like just dead links. So we can log out, and then we can try the admin page. Okay, so here we can see the admin page, Academy Launch Planner. So we had a little bit of fun with this when we were making the box. Just we wanted to have it, almost have people get a little bit of insight into Hack the Box. But this was, when we launched this was actually myself and Cryolite. He's one of my senior training developers. We were finalizing a lot of stuff for the initial launch. At the same time, we were doing stuff with the web design. We were testing all the modules. We had people from the community, we have some pretty awesome Discord mods, and then people like Savannah and some others that were helping test stuff and finding lots of bugs. So the interesting stuff here is that I would focus on is this part of separating the student and admin role. So we can see we clearly that wasn't done yet. And then it's pointing us to another vhost, this dev vhost. So we can look at the source again. And I'll just do this in burp instead. So here was us just logging in, and then the redirect to the admin page. I'll just send it to repeater so it's a little bigger. So just looking at the page once again, we just see the style sheet stuff. just that table that we were looking at before, and there's nothing really else interesting here. So I mean, clearly our next step is to go and check out this other vhost and see what's on it. So I'm going to add that to my if you're lazy or you just can't remember stuff because you have kids that beat your brains in all the time, you'll usually spend more time grepping your own commands than actually typing commands. I think that's good. No, it's not, because I can't type. Okay, so now let's go and check out that page. Okay, so this is interesting. So we've got some kind of error page here. Obviously something's broken. If we just look around, so we see Laravel here, log. So we, we can see that this Academy site is built on the Laravel framework, and it looks like the debugging was not turned off, and there's some error. So we can dig through this a bit and just see what all we can see, if there's any credentials or something interesting. So if we just look at the environment details here, this is similar, kind of similar if you've seen like a PHP info page or a, what's it called, like a Django debug page. If they don't turn off debug on there, you can get a lot of different environmental information. But Laravel in particular had an issue where there was way too much information being shared, and we're going to take advantage of that. So just digging in here, I mean, we see an email address. We can see, the web directory folder structure. We can see this app key, which looks interesting. I mean, it says it's base 64, so we can just take a quick look. Just try to decode it and just see what it looks like. So, I mean, it's some kind of binary stuff, not useful to us right now. So we do see the MySQL database, but it's running on localhost. It's not running on that port, that higher port that we saw earlier. But we do see the database username and password, which might be interesting when we got on the machine. And then once again, we're going to see the same stuff again. So at this point, if I saw this on an engagement, I would note this down, obviously. But I mean, the most interesting points to me would be that this is Laravel, this app key. Is there anything I can use for that? So I don't know if it's on here. No, ExploitDB is not on Parrot. But I mean, the first thing I would do is just go here, and I'm going to turn off my proxy. And this is one reason why that built-in browser is so useful. I mean, there's a ton of places you can find exploits, but I tend to go to ExploitDB first, or just Google for it. So let's just type in Laravel and see what we can find. So I mean, immediately I know that this is a newer machine. This was from November 2020, so it's not as likely that it's going to be one of these 2014, 2018 ones. So I mean, it could be, but I'm going to go through and actually start looking at some of the newer ones. So we've got this Laravel framework, unserialized RC. arbitrary file read, but it's not running Laravel File Manager. We're not running Laravel Administrator, so that's probably not it. Laravel Nova, it's actually a backend editor that you can use for doing stuff like writing in Academy modules in Markdown. But I mean, it's not going to be a denial of service. So this debug mode, remote code execution, looks interesting. But I want to go back and see if I can find the version here. So I'm not immediately seeing anything sticking out that's showing the version, unless anyone else sees it and I'm blind. But we can go back and look at the exploits. So there's this one. So this looks like it's taking advantage of debug mode, but I don't see. Okay, well, I do see that Laravel logs path that we saw there, but I'm not seeing anything about an app key. That seemed particularly interesting to me. Let's take a look at this one. So token unserialized, explicit vulnerability in these versions. Can assume that it's probably one of those. And here, authentication is not required, but it requires knowledge of the Laravel app key, which was given to us on that debug page. It's interesting, there's other vulnerabilities in there. And we do looks like we satisfy all the conditions of this. I don't know the exact version, I could probably find it, but it is leaking the app key for us. And I'm sure there's more manual ways to do this. I don't always like using Metasploit and relying on it, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to. And there are some walkthroughs for this. I think ZeroXDF, who works for Hack the Box now, he's a pretty awesome blog. If I recall correctly, him and maybe even IPSec in their videos, they showed a more manual way to do this, which is pretty cool and definitely worth looking into. And I'll drop that in the chat after I finish this. There it is. Okay, so let's load up Metasploit and just check and see if this is even in there, if we have to import it or something. And it may not be in here because I don't think I've updated this VM in a while, but we'll see. And if people are looking for resources for learning Academy or Hack the Box boxes better, I think ZeroXDF has one of the best blogs out there. I mean, some of his posts are absolutely amazing, and he tends to go above and beyond in all of his write-ups, where he actually will have a beyond root section where he picks something interesting on the box and dissect it, or if he did something automated, he'll show a manual way. Usually there's some extra stuff in there, kind of like a IPSec's videos. He'll go off and make some pretty cool content. And we work with ZeroXDF now, and I know that I don't think he's complete yet, but his goal is to make a blog post for every single retired machine. And I think he's pretty close there. Let me check now how many machines we actually have. So we have 218 weekly machines. So he's getting up there with his write-ups, which is pretty awesome. But anyways, let's let's search around and see if we can find this. Okay, so it looks like that's the one we want from 2018. Yeah, it has matches the disclosure date. You could also, I think you can search for CVEs in Metasploit too. Yeah, so there's a variety of ways you can search. If you're not too familiar with Metasploit, I mean, I recommend definitely learning it. It's a convenient tool, especially if you are pressed for time or some things you just can't find a better tool for. But I keep it in my toolbox. I'm not like certain organizations that don't let you use Metasploit on stuff. I think that you should have a complete toolkit and be familiar with all of them. Maybe understand how to use obviously manual techniques, but also use the automated stuff, because in the end, if a client's paying for something, they don't give a crap if you spend 6 hours writing an exploit or if you just did it automated. They're just buying the report. So we can do a Metasploit. If you search, you can just give the number, the result. So we can see here, so what options we need to set. Yeah, Ipsec's videos are awesome. His voice is soothing too. Okay, so let me back up for a second. So Savannah sent me something I wasn't aware of. To actually enable, I don't see it under project options. So we can use the embedded browser. I guess in the past, or maybe in later versions, that's just checked by default. But so now here we can hopefully, now we're getting another error. Okay. Well, I recommend going and getting the latest version and just messing around with the embedded browser, because it is awesome when it works. So for this exploit, we need the app key. So I'm not sure exactly what format we need to put it in, if we need the whole base 64 or let's just grab the value itself. Fucking thing. So we've got the app key. Imagine I can give it that. I'm going to have to give it IP address and not positive. Actually, there's a vhost option, so let's give it that. So we've got the app key set. So it looks like you just need the base 64 encoded key. You've got the host running on port 80, vhost, target URI, I guess we don't need that because it looks like it's this debug page. It defaults to this reverse Perl shell, and we can try it, see if it works. Might have to change it. We need to set our L host. So in Metasploit, you can type that and you can hit tab and it'll assign. If you have multiple multiple IP addresses, it should go through them, but we can confirm that we want to use the ton 0 adapter, which is the one we get when we, I don't know where it is, when we logged on to the VPN. So it doesn't really matter what we put here. So we can check that we've got everything set properly. You can type run or exploit. Okay, so we got a shell, it looks like. You can just check it. Okay, so we've got, so we can use a variety of ways to just get a semi-interactive TTY. I'm just going to use Python. Here's an interesting, there's a lot of resources out there, but this is a pretty good post on various ways you can spawn a TTY shell. So next we're going to need to go and enumerate the machine. So we're www data user. Typing ID, we don't see we're in any special groups or anything. So we've got this public directory. Web.config is interesting to me. Anytime I see a config file, I think passwords. But I don't see anything interesting in there. I didn't even look at the robots file earlier. I can just see if there's anything in there, but nothing good. So here we can see the various Laravel related files. Config is interesting to me, but it's a directory. Looks like these are just various files, and I need to check around. I'm going to grab a enumeration script just so we can get as much data as possible. So I'm going to grab linps, which is pretty awesome. So since Hack the Box machines aren't web enabled, we need to pull our tools over from our own machine. There's a ton of ways you can do it. I'm just going to stand up a Python web server and pull the file over. I think that was what I gave it. Okay, I mean, if you're interested, you can always go back and check and see that it pulled it over. Okay, so we can kill that. So we don't want to, I use that on engagement sometimes, but don't want to leave things open in case, the client's poking around their network, and be pretty embarrassing if they start pulling files off your box or something. So recommend if you start anything like that, immediately kill it. Or, if you really want to take the time, you can use IP tables and stuff and firewall yourself off a bit. So let's just make this executable and then run it. These enumeration scripts are great, but they produce a massive amount of data. So it's a bit to go through if you're not familiar with it. I think there was some controversy around this script in particular because it was doing some auto-pwn stuff. I think they changed that. Oh, there's a ton of cheat sheets out there for Linux privilege escalation enumeration, doing it manually by hand. There's a ton of scripts. This one is pretty awesome. And this hack tricks stuff book for Windows and Linux privilege escalation is pretty solid. So we can see here, it's just coming back with a massive amount of information. I mean, this would be overwhelming to anyone. I don't typically run these. I typically have my own checks that I do, but I just wanted to show you, what can be found with these. Usually I would grab this output and pull it offline and start working through it. If I hadn't found anything, just manually going through my checks. So we can see there's just a ton of stuff here. So I'll just scroll through quickly from the top just so we can get a little bit of information, but I'm not going to go through every single part of this. All right, so we can see here that it'll actually, there's a legend for different colors of what stuff we should look at. So we can just focus on the red, yellow, which is probably a vector, or red stuff that we should actually look at. So it looks like the pseudo version might be vulnerable here. And we can see we confirmed this earlier just from the OpenSSH version running that it is Ubuntu 2004, or probably the most up-to-date at the time. So it might be vulnerable to that pseudo privs that came out a few months ago. You can check into that. Digging through here, we can see that it's a VM, which is going to give us a bunch of information that we don't really care about. And we can see all our environmental variables. So here, yes, it's a VMware virtual machine. If there's any unmounted file systems that we might be able to mount and dig through, nothing there. So here, I always like to look at cron jobs and see what's running in case there's something I might be able to take advantage of, like a writable script or directory or something. So we can see it looks like just some of the standard stuff that runs on a Linux machine. We can use a tool like PSSpy if we want to look into and actually see what's running and the commands that are running. But I don't see anything particularly interesting here. We can see our own commands that we ran. And I guess that's the Perl shell that Metasploit used. So I don't see any interesting permissions on these binaries. So the only things really running here are the Apache server and SSH, and then we know there's the MySQL running on localhost. So timers, that's an interesting way you can escalate privileges, but I don't see anything non-standard there. So IP addressing, if there's any containers or something that we might need to get into, or if we're in a container, but I can see there's just one IP, so there's no container nonsense going on. Again, we can just see standard ports. Can't run TCP dump. Not seeing anything interesting here. So this is interesting to me. So users with a console, so we can see, and it looks like all these users can log in. So we might need to do some lateral movement to get to one of these users before actually getting to root. So some more interesting stuff is we can see what actual groups these users are in. So, and if we can get to the egress user, it looks like it would be interesting. There's a sudo or LXD is a way you can escalate privileges with using a like an Alpine Linux container and LXC stuff. No, he's a sudo or this. So my user doesn't have anything interesting. These ones don't either, but this one looks like we want to get to, because if you're in the ADM group, it means that you can read files in /var log. So pretty much any log files that are on the system, and if there's any sensitive information passing in those log files, you could read them as a non-root user. So we can see who last logged on. So root and egress, and there's some reboots that happened. Last log on times. So we don't see anything recent that really indicates that there might be any activity going on the machine, any users that we can attack or anything. So no standard MySQL passwords. I didn't know that it actually tries authentication checks. That's interesting. So just digging around here, we can see some more stuff about the Apache config. This is where the vhosts would be. There's just a ton of stuff here. So it is signaling this LDAP, but it's probably just something standard. I mean, there could, if this was an AD enabled connected box, there could be some credentials that we could grab there. SSH config file, I might want to look at that if we can't find anything else. And then it's just going through all these just various other interesting privs vectors, but it's not really finding anything of note. Nothing there. Okay, so here's some backup and database type files. So these are those past credentials that we saw earlier on the debug page. We want to come back to that. So some GitHub files. Okay, so here we go. We found some environmental files, particularly in the web root. Here we have that app key, and we do have the actual database password and user. So I'm going to grab that and copy that down. It looks like maybe the debug page might have been able to, maybe it'll display more of this information if it's configured a different way, because it looks like it displayed everything except for these credentials. So there's this homestead that we saw. It's FTP ini files, but there's no FTP service running. And then just a lot of other standard stuff. So we can't actually read any of these users bash rc or their other files. So we can't dig into those yet. And these are the various SUID binaries that are running on here. So, if there's a misconfiguration, we might be able to use one of them to escalate. But these, to me, just look like everything that you would see on a standard Ubuntu box. And it just gets deeper and deeper into when we do get to another user, we're gonna start to dig through their stuff. We can see that the user file is in this cryolite directory, so we probably want to get to that user next. And then there's just all the stuff in the web root, which I personally don't want to dig through all that. I mean, it might come to that sometimes, but we have some good information here, which is that one password. We do have other IPs that the machine has interacted with. And then passwords inside logs. We can't really see anything, but we know that if we did get that other user, we'd be able to read log files. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just try, I'm just going to see if we have credential reuse, and we can switch to that cryolite user. Now, usually if I find a password on a machine, I'll try it for everything that I can think of. Okay, so we did get this user, and as we said before, we're in the ADM group, so we can read log files. Here we would just grab the user txt file. So I like to look at bash history and see if there's any commands in there, but we can see that this isn't actually saving anything because it's redirecting to dev null. So there wouldn't be anything interesting in there that we can find. As I said, if we're in the ADM group, we can read different log files. So if I just look at permissions on here, I can see, some of them you can't read still unless you're root, but certain ones you can see here that group has access to. So I'm just gonna open here, and some of this stuff just comes with time and being able to recognize stuff on systems, but I want to see if there's any like non-standard logs on here, or we can just grep for passwords and stuff through there. So the interesting stuff to me here is the auth log. Which we can see, so the various authentication attempts that happened. We could dig through this for passwords, but I don't see anything there. So this audit directory is interesting to me because it's non-standard, and this audit directory will be there when something called the PAM TTY audit PAM module is used. So what that does is it actually enables auditing of TTY input for whichever users you want or that are in the configuration file. PAM is an authentication module that you can do to just implement various authentication services in Linux. If this is enabled, and for whatever users it's tracking, it will log everything, including credentials. And what that would actually look like in the PAM configuration would be like this, which I dropped in the in the chat. So we can assume that since this file is here, it's in use. There's stuff in that file and we can read it. There's a few of them though. So there's a few ways we can dig through this. So we can look through manually, and there's a ton of information there. I don't really want to scroll through all that. So we remember there's the other users on the system. So we can just start grepping for users and see if anything comes back. Okay, so it looks like the only users actually been active on the system was me. And I'm logging my own passwords, which is good. So this is going to audit pretty much everything I did or this user did when they logged in. So we can see authentication success, the environment variables that are set when we log in, and then we can actually see commands that were run. So just looking through here immediately, I see some stuff. There's some hex here that looks interesting, I guess. So we can grab this and bring it back to our machine and try to decode it and see what it gives us, if it gives us anything. Okay, so we can see that our user ran Composer, so that's not specifically interesting. So this file doesn't really have much in it. But since we know that this is the user that's been most likely on the system, we can just dig through the other files. I think that'll do it. So there's still a ton of stuff here. And I don't really want to dig through it all personally. This would just be a ton for us to try to process, but there is another utility. We can actually view the audit report. It's AU report, and we can dig through there and try to find, get a TTY report of all the stuff that was run. So we can run that, and this is going to actually parse those logs and dig through them and look for everything that was run, so we don't have to manually go through all this crap. So it looks like an audit log. Somebody switched to Mr. Ben user. They did put in the password. Then they did a few other things. And then, so, obviously the password is the most interesting thing to me. And this is actually my password for everything, so don't steal it. But just since I made this, I can just show you what that would have looked like if we had dug through there. So this is the hex that we would have wanted to see. And if we had just manually dug through there, we could have decoded the password ourselves. So, I mean, the next logical step for me is to try to just switch to this user. And we can drop this password in. So this user doesn't have any particularly interesting groups that they're in. You can check their home directory, see if there's anything interesting. There is this bash history, which we can't read. This composer file or directory is kind of interesting, but there's nothing there. At this point, we could run the linp script again, but it's kind of painful to watch through. So, I mean, the typical things that I would do in this scenario would be check my group membership, dig around looking for files that I can read, or just look for sudo privileges. So if you do sudo-l, you can actually just see if your user has any sudo privileges. And if password is required, then you need their password. Sometimes you can sudo without a password. So we can see here that we can run composer as root, which is interesting to me. And Composer is part of the Laravel framework. It's a tool it's like dependency management, so you can declare libraries and stuff for whatever project you're working on, create new projects. So what I would instantly do is go and there's a variety of things we can do. We can look up the man page for Composer if we really want to dig through it and try to look for some interesting functionality in there that might be able to be leveraged. So immediately I would zero in on exec and try to figure out how I could use that to escalate privileges. The other thing we can do is the GTFO bins project. This basically, there's this, and then there's one for Windows, which is Lullabuzz, which is basically Linux and Unix binaries that can be used for reverse shells, command execution, file upload, download, a variety of things. So it's super handy because it'll save the grunt work for you, so we don't actually have to figure out how to use that exec command. It'll tell us. So here we can see it can be used to break out of a restricted environment, but we're not in a restricted environment, so we don't particularly care. But sudo, so it can use to access the file system, escalate or maintain privileged access. So it looks like this is what we want to do. And sometimes we have to do something different with this, but let's try and just go ahead and run it like this and see what happens. So I'm just going to run from the temp directory just in case I have to create anything. I know I have write privileges there. So it looks like what it's going to take, it's going to create a composer.json file, which I assume is a project file for Laravel. I'm not too familiar with it, but and it looks like it's going to actually put a script into that temp directory. And then when we run sudo, it's going to use Composer and execute this JSON file that we put in the working director and tell it to actually run the script that we included within the JSON file. So we can actually, okay, so we did that. And now but we're going to probably need the absolute path to it. So we've got user bin composer for this to work. Okay, so it looks like it did something. I tried to create something, but obviously failed because we're not really creating a real Laravel project here. Gives us a nice warning here, which we don't care about because, so now we're root. So, the next step here is I would just go and grab the root flag. So we've got the root flag, and we've also got this academy.txt thing. And this was when this box came out on a Saturday in November, when we actually did a kind of a soft launch of Academy. And the first few people who rooted it found this in there. And we just did a quick announcement, given the URL. The funny thing is that people, tons of hackers hacked the box. So when the box came out, people actually started doing subdomain discovery and actually found the page before the box was even released. So we were getting registered users. And then once people started owning the box, it started spreading pretty quickly. But yeah, this is, it's a pretty fun box. There's a lot going on there. But it's pretty real world to me because, again, that, it's not uncommon for developers to make mistakes with authorization, authentication. I would always check when you can register an account if there's anything you can manipulate there, even maybe introducing a parameter or something, because you might have some lateral or vertical privilege escalation. Obviously, there's on Windows and Linux, there's a ton of enumeration you got to do. Those helper scripts are great, but if you don't really know what you're looking at, then they're just going to give you a ton of data that you're going to be pouring through. So I recommend learning the methodology, and so you can quickly go through those files and narrow it down like we did there. And then, the admin group, it's not uncommon to stick users in groups or give them specific privileges to do things. And then, the pseudo stuff, I haven't seen that too often on pen tests, but it can happen. Usually I'll just see stuff like you can sudo without a password and run everything as root, but it's not unfeasible that this would happen. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about the machine or hack the box or anything.
I can unmute myself. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to add them in the Discord, and Chase and I will be around to be able to answer any questions in the Discord. We just want to say thank you to Ben for coming out and walking through Academy, and we hope that everyone had a good time walking through Academy.
Well, thanks for having me. And I just dropped a link in the chat, which is interesting. This is actually, it talks about that password logging using that PAM audit module. It's a short read, but it's interesting.
Sweet.
It sums it up pretty well.
Well, if anyone has any questions, like I said, feel free to ping us in the Discord. And thank you, everyone, for coming out today. Bye.